I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the regular session of the Cascade School District Board of Directors will now convene in the Cascade High School Library and via Zoom. The laws governing boards of education require that their work be done where the public can observe their actions. Please remember that this is the board's meeting for the public to observe. Others may participate only with approval of the board. Okay. Visitors guest list. I'm asking everyone here if you have signed the visitors guest list. And then I need approval of the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from the March 13th, 2023 executive session and regular board meetings.
And I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the regular board meeting minutes and the executive session minutes for March 13th. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Prioritize agenda, Mr. Drill.
I think we can go right down the agenda. This could be a efficient meeting,
Perfect.
right?
Okay,
Good.
that's what we're asking for. All right, then we'll start with superintendent's report, please.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to April. Some days I don't think it feels like that, but it is April on the calendar, so hopefully we'll get through it. We are, as my report indicates, we are continuing to watch and pay attention to the legislature. We are fortunate that the legislative body, the Senate, have agreed to a $9.9 billion amount for K-12 schools. Scott Miller's group, the finance directors across the state, still believe that public schools need about $10.3 billion, so it's about $400 million short of where it is, just to roll up the costs and continue to do the work that we do. So what is happening at the moment is that $400 million difference is really in some ways being held hostage until the May economic forecast comes out, which is near the beginning part of May. It'll come out. I think most people are hopeful that will continue to stay slightly positive. It has continued to stay positive. If it stays positive, kind of behind closed doors, the conversation has been that the public K-12 public schools could see a little bit more money. So we're hopeful that is the case. The $9.9 billion will put us in a place where we are okay financially. We have grown, as we've talked about a number of times. Closer to $10.3 billion puts us in a place where it's far easier to do the things that we need to do to make sure our kids get educated appropriately. So we'll keep an eye on that. We'll continue to monitor that. I'll keep you posted as to what's going on. There are districts, you probably will hear around the state, there are districts that are in trouble at 9.9. They haven't not budgeted as well, or they've lost kids, and they are concerned, very concerned that if they don't get 10.3 or higher, I don't think it will be higher, they will be looking at cutting class sizes, they will be cutting teachers, they'll be cutting days. We could start some of that. We haven't seen that in a while, but you might hear that from other districts. We are in good shape. Mr. Bill and I were just talking today financially, and so we feel like we're going fairly well. One of the things that helps us with that is the number of students that we have, right? We've been up all year. We continue to be up. We continue to hold over 2,660 kids. As of April 5th, we were at 2,664. That's 104 students more than we had at this time last year. That equates to dollars, and so that helps us continue to make sure that we are modestly doing the right things, making conservative decisions, and moving financially in a place that allows us to continue with full days, hire all the people we need to hire, make sure we continue with the people that we have, and go from there. So we're excited about that. The new pool house, that is getting ready to be put in. It has been built. It just like the other modulars, it shows up one day with a big crane, and then 2 weeks later it's done. The city of Turner was the one that went through that process, and we were working with them. I would say that they're the ones doing the big lift, and we're probably spending a lot of time doing the logistics around it, making sure that everything's right. All the permits are gone through the city. Mr. Lovell will be back in town at the end of this week, and he'll continue on. Jesus has done a tremendous job, and a lot of the other guys working in our maintenance department have helped make sure that that's taken care of. So we really appreciate that. Our hope is that it is done by the end of this month, and that we can start to prepare for summertime pool season if we can ever get the rain to quit and be out there to do that. So that's exciting. My other announcement tonight is that we talked last month about the fact that Mr. Thatcher is truly going to retire down to just a few days a year. And so we started to look for his replacement. We found that. We announced today that Brian Dyer, who's sitting here, will be the new Director of Education. And we posted today a position for principal of Cloverdale Elementary, which he has held for the last 6 years. So I can't believe it's been 6, but there you go. I know, crazy business right there. And the other piece was inclement weather days. We talked a little bit about that last time. I'm hopeful we don't have to deal with that any longer. Olin shakes his head. He's one of the guys out driving roads. And we actually had to do that last week. I don't know if you noticed that Wednesday morning it showed snowflakes like from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. So hopefully that will change. But my recommendation is we continue on and end our school year right where we ended. We missed 2 full days. However, we did have additional days that we added in the middle trimester just to make sure that that works. So I don't feel like I didn't bring any need for you guys to vote on anything to make adjustments. If you can leave it as it is. If that's a big problem, please let me know. We can bring something back next month for you to vote on. Any questions?
I do have a question. If you know that House Bill 1045, I forgot what the right one, is that the free meals for, that's the one for free meals for everybody. Do you know where that's at?
It's in an omnibus bill that, and what I mean by that, there's lots of things in education that got stuffed in that bill. And one of the things that I'm hearing is that anything in that bill that's going to cost significant money is going to come out. So it's either going to come out or they're going to let that die. And they're going to take things that don't cost money and stick them in the new bill. So
Okay.
I haven't seen anything yet this date. I don't see that going forward. I know that the Biden administration in the last 2 weeks has started to talk about it at the federal level. Can we stretch out what those numbers look like with regard to students being eligible for free and reduced lunch?
Okay.
So what I think the state is going to say is, if you want more money in your general fund, you're probably not going to get this. And I think most superintendents would be okay with that because they want money to operate schools. So that's what I know about it so far. Keep an eye on it.
I will.
Keeping track.
Perfect. Okay.
Other questions?
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Mr. Drill.
Thank you.
4B, Finance Director's Report, Mr. Pillar.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You have my report in front of you. As Mr. Drill said, our financials continue to track normally and pretty well. You have that financial report there. I don't expect very many changes between now and the end of the year. So I think we're going to finish up pretty solidly for us. The budget process is going well. We're going to have a proposed budget for you and the rest of the committee by May 1st. So that gives you plenty of time to review it before the first budget committee meeting in May. Also, next month, we will be providing you a budget resolution to amend this year's budget. One of the things that we have been doing, every year in the last probably 5 or 6 years has been amending the current year operating budget. Simply because we have so many changes to our grants and those types of things. We tend to shore things up at the end of the year just to make sure that we don't get any budget violations. And then finally, good news, we got the seismic grant that we applied for. So that was $2.5 million to replace and shore up the building, the old high school gym. So that brings our entire seismic grant awards to 4 and about $7.1 million. So that's pretty exciting news for us. We're going to start working on that. The design and that kind of stuff will start this summer, but we'll select a contractor and go through that part in the fall, and then most of the construction will be happening next summer. So that's it. Anything else? Any questions for me? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Director of Education's report, Mr. Thatcher.
Good evening, everyone. Just one item for your approval. We've been doing some heavy lifting on as far as curriculum adoption, math and language arts, the biggest ones. And for another 6 or 7 years, we won't have to do that. But this is the biggest one. The last one is language arts for elementary, which again, that obviously impacts every kid and every teacher at that level, K through 5. This is probably the most extensive process we've gone through. We had a team of about 16 teachers, administrators, specialists that met on their own time individually, groups here down at the ESD. So I'm very confident that after a lot of back and forth and great information that we selected the one that'll fit our district best. And so I recommended, or we have recommended, Benchmark Education for curriculum for K-5 for all of the schools. So that includes all the teacher materials, includes all the student materials, and includes 7 years of that digital access. If you remember, I mentioned last time about the math, that that's a big part of the curriculum now, is having online access both in the classroom and outside the classroom. And so we'll have digital licensing for 7 years. The cost is there for you. It's close to $300,000, which again is in line with the biggest curriculum adoption we do. It'll be good for 7 years. There'll be some other additional costs going along with that, because every time you adopt a new curriculum, there, especially in language arts, there's some issues with aligning some of the extra resources we do, like our interventions, and then some of our special ed resources. And I'll bring that at a later date, but the core curriculum will be right there. So that would be my recommendation for you guys to do a resolution later on this evening. Questions?
Any questions? Thank you for your work.
Yep,
Okay,
it was the teachers, they did a great job.
Special Education Director's report, Mrs. Johnson.
Now my report in front of you. I have at the very bottom some appreciation, and I actually have Brittany Griffith here with me today. And this is the teacher that I wanted to talk about the most. She is our lead teacher in our behavior program at Almsville Elementary School. Our behavior program serves anywhere between 14 to 16 kids, grades K-5. And these kids are struggling with very challenging behaviors: hitting, kicking, spitting, tearing apart classrooms, yelling, cussing, you name it. And it's not what every single teacher, it's not every teacher's cup of tea, right? You have to be a pretty invested individual to hang tight in these classrooms. And when we hired Brittany, we hired her from Salem Kaiser, and she has been an absolute gift into this school, into this classroom. And I just wanted to publicly say thank you. Yeah.
How many kids are in that class?
It ranges between, there's an ebb and flow depending on the day, but between 14 and 16 kids a day.
And you're in there by yourself?
Oh, no.
Okay. Oh, great. Right.
So
Okay.
which brings me to the next part of my presentation today, is to talk to you guys about staffing.
Okay. That was a good segue, wasn't it?
So with the
I
needs,
did.
so there's a couple different things. I know that I don't know if you've seen that there's a lawsuit currently happening in Salem Kaiser from teachers actually bringing a lawsuit towards the districts due to challenging behaviors. And then there's also a Senate bill that just went through, and it's kind of held up right now around shortened school days. There's a lot of things that are happening legally, but our kids are not coming to us with a great deal of skill right now. The challenging behaviors they're getting harder and harder every single year. Kids are more and more impacted, and safety is a very large concern. And if I don't highly staff programs like Brittany's, one, I'm not going to be able to keep her. Secondly, our kids are not safe and our staff are not safe. So I've gone to Darren a couple different times, and I've really advocated for additional trained, highly professional staff to support my programs. She has a behavior program. I also have an autism program and a life skills program down at the elementary that also have students that have challenging behaviors, but they might be different due to different types of disabilities. And we just hired 2 in-house autism specialists for starting next school year. And that is a gift. And I cannot say thank you enough to you guys, but I cannot say thank you enough to him, because that truly is going to be a huge positive impact on not only supporting our students and our families, but also supporting our classroom teachers who are in it every day. And I also can't say thank you enough to these 3 administrators, because when you're an administrator at Almsville, being an administrator is hard, but at Almsville, when you house all of those specialized programs without the right staff, your job is already even more challenging. And these 3 individuals are in the thick of it. They are getting kicked in the shins. They're having desks thrown at them. They're having chairs thrown at them. They're helping, they have to do restraints in classrooms. And so this crew right here, I truly believe, have the hardest job in our district. So yeah, all that to say, thank you. And thank you. And when I come and I ask for staffing or specialized placements for kids, it's truly out of safety for our kids. It's out of what's in our best interest for our students as well. And just keeping everybody, students and staff, as safe as I possibly can and make them feel supported.
Great.
What kind of
Are
questions do
you
you have?
getting
for
what
me?
you need?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I am. Well, one thing with Darren too, I worked really hard financially to only spend money when it's necessary, right? Getting our kids what they need.
Mhm.
So when I have something happen, I can go and say, I have this pot of money or I have this pool of money. And I use it very wisely, even with curriculum and supplies, looking at how we can, I call it a puzzle. I am moving a puzzle every day, all day long. And every year, the start of the year, creating a new puzzle. And so I try to use all the FTE in-house that I can before I go and I ask Mr. Drell for more FTE. But when I do, he knows it's because I ran out of puzzle pieces and I need it. My kids need it.
She's doing a good job of that. You've heard her talk a couple of times this year, right? This area of education is going to exponentially get bigger and more difficult. The lawsuit she's talking about is from the teacher side of things, the demands and the needs for safety and security. The law that's actually being held up in the House at the moment is from the parent side of things that demand more access for those kinds of kids to be in front of teachers more often. And the school district is going to get caught in the middle with a lawsuit either way. So what we're trying to accomplish is to have as much resource as we can, right? And be upfront about what we can and cannot accomplish and stave off until we do get the lawsuit. It's not going to be if, it's just when. And Kathleen has promised me it's going to be if, not when. So she's working with that. In the meantime, I don't know if you noticed, but the graduation rates that she had in her piece right there,
Yeah.
you can see very clearly at the end of 18-19. And then suddenly, right, it starts to take some adjustments and we've worked our way back up to 85%. And notice that the state average is 67.5. So this is starting to become an issue that we are very proud of. It starts down at the elementary level with our teachers that put up with a lot of stuff and work their way through. We are not perfect, but we are getting there. Scott and I were talking today about Kathleen's ability to do the resource with regard to finance, and it's gone well. So we'll cross our fingers and keep going. But just like last week, we went to the EST, a number of programs. We get money through the EST, the WSD, right? We have so much we get to spend. And I think in about 12 minutes, she spent a little over $600,000.
Just 5 minutes.
Just 546. It doesn't take long to spend that money, but those are the kinds of things. And the reason why we do it that way, right, is because we don't need a full-time psychologist. We don't need, so you buy bits and pieces that's shared across the region. That's how that works. But we needed to go in there and take care of that. So this is one area that we're going to have to pay attention to closely.
Thank you for your hard work.
Can I ask you a
Okay.
question? So it says here that there's 20 students are currently being evaluated and eligibility is determined within the next 60 school days. So talk to me a little bit, what does that look like for the child that's being evaluated for those 60 days while we're waiting for, I guess, the answer?
Right.
Where is that child on day 3, on day 8, on day 10?
Depends on the situation, but I'm going to give you your just basic run-of-the-mill. Maybe you were evaluating for specific learning disability.
Okay.
So, and I'll use the elementary as a great place to start. So it's usually where most of our initial evals come from. So when we start looking at evaluation, first of all, it's quite the process. You're making sure you're running interventions. We need to make sure we give the student an opportunity to learn. So they're running through.
Let me, just for clarification,
Yeah.
do you decide if this child needs to be evaluated or do their parents, or do you together? So the parents have to be on board with this
Yes.
as well as
Yes.
administration.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's not just admin. So we have a whole team. We call it our SST team or our EAST team. And it is my assessment coordinators. We have admin, we have a special ed teacher on board, gen ed teacher, and parents. So if we determine that we run through an RTI program, which is response to intervention, we run through all of our interventions for reading, for math, for writing, whatever it may be, and a student's not making progress. We then pull together an SST team and we talk about, do we need to look at evaluating the student for special education? From the time we decide, yes, parent signs consent, we have 60 school days to complete that evaluation. During that time, they're still in their general education classroom.
Okay.
They're still receiving their interventions that they would as a general education student. Because you're considered a general education student until the day we determine you're eligible
Until you're
for
not,
special
right.
education services.
Okay.
Yes, so in a typical situation, that would be that scenario. They're still in their gen ed class and they're still receiving their interventions.
Going through the same motions they were
Yep.
before the evaluation process
Yes.
started. And then at the end of that 60-day evaluation, then you determine if they go,
If they qualify or not,
right?
and then if they qualify, then we're creating an IEP. And as an IEP team, we're deciding what kind of services they need, what kind of supports that they need, and what is their placement. And placement means where they're receiving their special ed services, whether it's in a gen ed classroom, a resource room, a self-contained room, or a specialized program.
Okay, so now let's look at it from the purely financial side. Does the district, and I know we've asked this before, Mr. Drill, and I apologize, I'm asking it again. Does the district get the same funding for a child that's in the standard classroom versus the special ed classroom? Is it the exact same monies?
So yes and no. So we do get special ADM up to 11%. As I think we're
Yeah,
currently is at
11%,
11%, we get an additional funding.
Okay.
Then we, on top of that, if we have a student who is considered a high cost student, which means it costs over $30,000 to fund their education just for them, then they fall into what's called a high cost category. And of the district, I think we landed on, I want to say 24 students who met the high cost,
24 of our 405 or 450 kids are,
meet the high cost.
The
which
high
means
cost.
It cost the district over $30,000
right,
to
for
educate.
5% of those
Yes.
kids. Okay,
And I would say of those kids that made that, they range from costing over $95,000 to educate for one student down to, 35. And we have kids that come right up to that $30,000 mark, but we don't necessarily get that $30,000 to educate.
Okay.
Yes.
all right.
So that brings on a question for me though. So like right now we have 20 kids for 60 days. We don't have 60 school days left.
Correct.
So does that mean that they are at the top of the list in the fall when school starts? So you guys will go right into, so they don't have to wait an additional 60 days.
Correct. So of those, so we have 450 students who are currently eligible for special education, which if you notice, is the highest number we've ever had in this
Ever had.
district. The second thing is those 20 kids, my assessment team, they are amazing. Mary and Terry knock it out along with my speech team, my 3 SLPs that are in-house. Most of those 20 kids will be done before the end of this school year. And those who are not done, they will immediately finish right in September. However, we will have kids sign consent starting next month for next school year.
Okay. It just seems the process is so long and you're
Yes.
waiting so hard.
Yes.
And then to see this happen, you're going, they better be at the top of the list.
Oh, yes.
And I knew they would be, but
Yeah.
I had to ask. Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Thank you. And thank
Good
you all the
job.
team for doing what you
Thank you.
did.
Good job.
High school principals report, Mr. Rasmussen. What was that?
Mr. Dyer. Good evening. You have my report in front of you. I would like to formally invite you to graduation, June 7th at our high school football stadium and field there. We're going to have a great ceremony and we're going to pray for no rain. So we had a great ceremony last year. Looking to get around 180 kids graduated this year. That includes a good 30 from the Cascade Opportunity Center, where Ms. Thompson is principal. So should be a good turnout and a good event. We're looking forward to it. The rest of my reports in front of you, we mentioned some things about safety. We mentioned some things about the arts, who are doing a great job. We've hired a great choir teacher this last year. She is growing that program. She's fantastic. We just did Beauty and the Beast. So the elementary came over and watched during the school day. And we want to do more things like that, benefit our students and our community. So just a great opportunity for our high school kids to show their talents and get some recognition and also benefit the community they live in. So we're super excited about that. Any questions?
I got 2. Okay, one, it's 2-part question. Mr. Dyer, are you staying on as the safety, what is your term?
That's a good question.
So safety coordinator,
Yes.
when you take on your new role?
Yes.
Dynamite. Okay, cool. So my other question is, do we do any kind of active shooter training for here at the high school?
We do lockdowns and lockouts.
Okay.
For various scenarios. We don't necessarily do an active shooter. We have not talked about that, but we talk about lockdowns, what that means. And Mr. Diana recently had a conversation about, what's the new data saying? What's the new policies or procedures saying? He's going to be bringing some stuff to us at the school level to talk about what do we do.
Is there a reason we're not having an active shooter drill?
We've never, we did this a few years ago and it went sideways. We made the news. It was a little interesting,
All right,
but
fair enough.
because it freaks some people out.
Right.
We might have been a little too progressive, to be honest with you, at the beginning. So that is something we'll talk about. But the lockdown process is the shelter in place or the stay in room place is one of the best things we can do to talk about, and giving teachers guidance after that process, after we are in their rooms. Giving them directions about that going forward is our next steps. So, and we'll be talking a lot more about that as we go through. But we've done it well. We've done 2 lockdowns this year so far, and it's worked well. It really has. And this is a difficult campus to lock down with 3 different buildings. We're adding a 4th this summer with the science building. So teachers are really responsible to get doors near them. We're looking at potentially adding electronic locks. If that's the right choice, we do want to make sure we do what's prudent as well as being responsible. So yeah, we're going to look at all those things.
What does the lockdown look like?
The lockdown, basically, we communicate to the teachers most of the time through the PA system, and teachers immediately lock their doors, which they all are using their lock blocks. Their doors should be locked all the time anyway. They're with that little lever right there, that little black thing on the side above the knob. The door is always locked, and when that's pushed over, the door never quite latches, so kids can come in and out all day long. As soon as we're in a lockdown, we pull that little black thing over, pull the door shut, and it's locked from the outside. And then we get students out of view of the windows. There are some various decisions about whether we should be covering windows. Fire department's in a discussion with us about, whether we should be doing that or allowing us to be seen in, but we'll cross those bridges. I talked to fire last week about that. But then students are quiet. We go through, try to see if we can hear any kids, just to see, because we know that in a true active student situation, 95% of the time they come to a locked door, they're moving on. And so if they don't hear anything, they're going to move to the next place. So that's our goal. We go through and we kind of check and see where it's at. PE department goes into this storage room out in the new building, and it's kind of crazy shoving 70 kids in that little room, 2 classes, but it works. So they're remarkably quiet in there, I love to say. So, but yes, it's not a fun process. It's a world we live in today. I wish we didn't have to do lockdown drills, but we do, and we can practice them well.
We also, before you ask, we also, I don't know if you noticed tonight, brand new doors. You open the doors, right? They're brand new hard lock doors. We used to have this
Okay,
issue over
good.
here where you just yank
Right.
and open up the door.
Yeah.
Not anymore. That happened in spring break. And of course, Pete's talked about our safety officer that walks this campus.
Okay. I know we talked a lot about this in August, but how are the teachers being notified that we're in a lockdown?
Most of the time through a PA system, a PA announcement.
Okay,
The PA system works still. We're upgrading that system. That's one of the things I mentioned there. We're going to be getting clocks and with speakers and actually I'll have a reader board on there. We can actually put lockdown. So we don't even have to say it. We'll just be able to push a button and say lockdown and maybe have a tone go or something, depending on if a shooter is already in the building or a threat is in the building, so to speak. We could just have a tone go and people could look and see. These clocks are about 5 by 20. And they're going to have the time on them all the time. They also have speakers on them. They'll become our PA systems.
Okay.
So we're going to try that. And if it works well, we'll look at adding that across the district, according to Mr. Grill. So,
okay. And I've said this a million times, so forgive me, but as an old PE teacher, remember when something comes over on the PA, we're in a really noisy gym, and we used to send a kid up to find out what was said. Exactly. So I know that junior high is pretty good about wearing their walkie-talkies, but I just wanted to encourage the high school teachers to
it's
do the
great.
same.
We actually got some amplifiers for the speakers in the gym, so they'll be
Okay.
much louder than a typical speaker. That was part of the bid that we signed. So
Okay,
I knew that was an issue.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Just one other
Okay.
question. I know that unlocked doors are, that's where they go in. But on a given day in the fall and in the spring especially, you walk down the halls, how many doors now are open? Used to be every door was open, when my kids were in school. So do we still have teachers that keep their doors open in the fall and the spring?
During the classroom
Classroom
doors.
time, yeah, their classroom doors.
Yes,
Okay.
they're 95% of them are locked. And so it's just a matter of pulling the door shut to lock it.
Okay,
But yes, many teachers leave the doors open so you can walk down and hear teachers teaching. It's a good environment,
Mhm.
keeps hallways quieter, keeps kids aware of what's going on. But a lot of teachers like to shut the door, so it just varies.
it just depends. Okay,
Just really
all right, I was just curious if we still had that.
Sure.
One of the themes that we've dealt with for the few short months that I've been around here is staffing and getting the right people in the right places to do the right jobs. And we heard earlier tonight that in special ed, part of having the appropriate support staff, and I'm very glad to hear that. And last time you reported, I got the impression that we had administrators teaching science and, all that stuff, which I very much appreciate. And yet I'm also very embarrassed by that. Long term, that's not a recipe for success. And that's what I want to be focused on. What does your gut tell you about how we're doing on that in that area? And how do you feel about next year and staffing?
It's going to be a challenge. The market is small for incoming teachers. I was at Western Oregon today at a job fair.
Okay.
And we're headed to the Portland job fair, the big statewide one at the convention center tomorrow. And so looking for a math teacher, and I don't think Mrs. Lede or I met with one math teacher today, math candidate. So math and sciences are always short. Special ed is always short. Those are the three biggies. And we need those jobs. We have some other positions. We're going to have some great applicants, I'm sure. And we're going to keep. Now, at some level, you don't want to borrow or you don't want to steal from other districts, but we're going to. We have an obligation to our community here first. And so I've already nudged a few people who have strong connections. Hey, go see if anybody's willing to come on over. But we've talked to our younger teachers who still have connections to their universities. They're talking to friends. We're reaching out. So yes, it's going to be shallow. There's no doubt about it. But I'm optimistic. Really am.
Stay in the trenches, make the good ones.
Okay, we will.
Okay, all of you.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
it.
I do want to say that I took my son to see the play. It was
Oh,
fantastic.
Great,
It was
great.
really good.
Cool. Yeah, Mrs. Duff did an outstanding job and the kids were outstanding. So, and Mrs. Smith was the choral director of that play. So she's our choir teacher. She's a great job. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Junior high principals report, Mrs. O'Day.
Good evening, and you have my report. We are currently waiting. We should have 200 sixth graders coming back from outdoor school within the next 30 minutes. So
Okay.
very exciting. Of our 209, 200 went, including our life skills. Our new life skills teacher is phenomenal, and she went up with 9 of our sixth graders. And in the past, they haven't always been had a teacher who has been as proactive at getting those kiddos up there. So they loaded the short bus and up they all went. We brought additional instructional assistants. So super exciting. Of the 9 kids who didn't go, 5 are by choice, and we had 2 sick kiddos. So, and then one of the ones who stayed back today was like, oh, I do want to go. So he's going to be on the bus tomorrow. So it's just a super neat opportunity.
Awesome.
And we're really excited. A lot of planning and effort, but it's just super great. And kids were prepared today. I didn't see snow, so that was great.
Brutal.
Thankfully, Friday was pretty crummy weather and they were in for inside recess, and I commented to them, if you were at outdoor school, we'd be outside. Exactly. So dress, be ready. One positive that we're doing, we have a sparrow in our building. It's a community service project that our social responsibility and our AVID students really focus on. A sparrow student is somebody from another community, most often, who is dealing with a life-threatening illness. And our current sparrow is 7 years old and he has leukemia. And The Sparrow Club works with your partnering school, and instead of raising money per se, because that's hard for some kids who don't have the finances to be able to fund, they can do community service hours. And so then that will, any hour of community service, other businesses like Les Schwab or different financial institutions will donate $10 to the family. And so the junior high has already raised the 300 hours maximum for 3,000 for the family. So we're just super proud of our, the junior high kids, and it might even just be cleaning the cafeteria or cleaning the playground or helping out other students. But this year that our kiddo, we've already funded him. They are currently raising money for additional things that the family might need. Last year we had a little kiddo who had the butterfly syndrome where their skin is super fragile, and the family was raising money to go to Colorado for more specialized care. So it's just been really neat that the junior high kids see somebody in need and they're more than willing to help out. And it's not necessarily the money that they donate, it's the hours. And that's just a neat opportunity. Last of all, Mr. Rasmussen and I were at the job fair, and I so appreciate the opportunity to be able to go, especially this early in the process, to look for potential teachers. Quite a few did come up. Most of them were elementary based, unfortunately. Good Cloverdale and Turner's openings. One science position, and that's going to be a hard person to fill for Mrs. Coberly, who has been around for forever. And we're definitely sad to see her, not potentially, but leaving us. So she'll be hard shoes to fill. So, but there was one gal who did mention that she's science. So we will be hopeful that we'll actually see her application pop up in the next few days. So, but thank you for the opportunity to be able to go and at least get our names and faces out there. And Cascade is a district, quite a few people came over and said they were interested in, once they initially, a couple of them had to figure out where we were at, but
Right.
Yeah.
We're not in the mountains.
No,
Really
yes,
got
a few of
Yeah.
them thought we were up close to Portland, and once you mentioned Enchanted Forest, oh yeah, now I know. So, any questions?
Question? I'll ask a question
Yeah.
about attendance.
Yeah.
So it says you've got a 91% attendance rate. Are the 9% that aren't showing up, are they the same kids all the time? I mean, is it the same group
Pretty well,
in a box?
Mrs. Younker comes over every couple of weeks, and we really look at the population that are not attending. It's a lot harder this year because before we used pre-COVID, we had fines and court potential,
Right.
and at least that threat was there, and it was great. Now we don't have that, and so we try the other version of encouraging them to come to school, but if families aren't on board with it,
Right.
it's a lot harder to find a more.
Is online learning an option for those 9%?
Yes, although personally, from my experience, junior high students doing CBA online is more difficult because it's not like most places. It's definitely self-driven. So if they're not driven to
Right,
come to
understood.
school, that's
Right.
going to be even a bigger challenge for them to log on to,
Right.
and do a certain number of assignments. It's very self-paced. And while they're supposed to do 4 activities a day or whatever, if nobody's actually sitting there saying, this is what you need to do, it's definitely more challenging. We've had probably 15 to 20 kids attempt online, and most have returned to us intentionally, which is good because they need to be in person. And I think while they have social anxiety and everything, being around people is what's going to help them overcome these things.
So are you saying that we don't have the hook or the threat of
it's more the
fines, or
threat?
that's not an option anymore?
No,
The state doesn't care?
Well, they've taken it away because they felt we were penalizing the families who could least afford it, which in many senses was probably true. But I went to court multiple times, and most of the 2 or 3 judges that I was able to watch, it was more incentives on how can we help get you here. And the threat of the fine was way down. If you continue to this path, we will impose a fine, but they would really try to work with the families and come back in 6 weeks and let's see how you're doing and everything. So that was a definite more positive avenue. It was rare. I don't even know that I saw any family ever get fined in the time that I was there with the kids. So it's unfortunate. And I think we need to now look at, okay, how do we get these kids who are,
And I'm assuming other districts are in the exact same boat and
If not worse.
everybody's trying to figure out what the formula
If
is.
not worse, Ann Younker, who's phenomenal, knows these kids by name and families and
Right.
everything. And she goes out to their doorstep. Salem Kaiser, they're a name and a number, and
Right.
they're lost in the system.
Right, right.
Yeah, so I think we have a better hold on them, but we're just not, we don't have as many incentives to require them to come. Only Dutch Bro cards, hold out for so then,
Right.
Although we had a kiddo, she wasn't coming to school, and what kind of gift card did you want? And I posted in there, she
Yeah.
wanted a Petco because she wanted a lizard. So
Oh.
Ann's like, I'll go find a Petco gift card, whatever it takes to get her
Right. Did it
here.
work?
Yeah.
It did, and she has been here. Her attendance was like 40%. She's up to about 70%.
Right.
So for
Good.
that
Okay.
one and that family, it worked, but
Right.
other ones, once they get the, Subway, then we're good
Yeah.
now. We got to try over again. So,
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
thank you.
Wonderful. Appreciate
Thank
it.
Elementary principals report, Mr. Windsor.
Good evening. My report is in front of you. Wanted to share two things with you tonight. First is SEL. SEL stands for Social Emotional Learning. At the elementary levels, we use a program called Ruler. Mr. Thatcher brought that to the board, gosh, I believe before the pandemic. And it's a program that is given to us by the ESC. It comes to us from Yale. It's a great framework. It provides a lot of systems for our school to teach a lot of the skills that are kind of in short supply right now. A lot of the competencies that I listed there, social skills is kind of the name we give them at school. A way that we kind of help to quantify who needs additional support in those skills is by using something called the DESA, which is a screener that our teachers do for kids. Our counselors then compile all of that data and target individual students who need some additional support in any of those different competencies that I listed. This fall, we all sat down and looked at the school and saw that the biggest need was in first grade. For whatever reason, and I think across the district, different grades were impacted differently. We noticed that first grade was by far one of our highest need grades, and so we decided to devote all of our resources to targeting some first grade students with some additional interventions. So what that looked like was I listed 4 members of our team down there: Mr. Nelson, Mrs. Delamarter, Ksenia Coleman, and Vicki Peters. And they all got together, divided up the groups, and had small group interventions with all these students to work on things that they needed to do. And I am just incredibly thankful for all of their work and also the work of our teachers. And as you can tell with our data that we had from the middle of the year, we saw some significant growth. So I'm very thankful to our team who did those interventions. And when I asked for the data from them, they're like, this wasn't just us, right? And I'm like, I know it's all of us. It takes a team, but you guys had a huge part in this too. So I'm very thankful for them, wanted to recognize them publicly as well. So the second thing I wanted to chat about was professional development. We do a lot of that stuff over the summer. We do a lot at the beginning of the year. During the year, Mr. Drill gives us late start Wednesdays, which we use effectively and we love them. Last week, if you look on the last page, we did kind of a mini conference style PD, and we offered all of these different options for staff to take. We brought in a lot of people from the outside. We also tapped some of our master teachers to provide some professional development for our staff. Afterwards, we also sent out a quick little feedback form, and all the feedback we've received has been super positive. Teachers love it. It really, PD, I know when I was teaching, the main thing it did was get me more excited about teaching. So at this point in the year, April and May are long months, and they sometimes get to be a little bit of a grind. So anything we can do to reignite that fire with our staff, I think is beneficial. And at the same time, we're providing them with some amazing, amazing things. So special thanks to all of our staff who put on different PDs, and then our different folks who came in and presented as well. Any questions?
Sounds like an exciting place to be right now.
Yeah.
Thanks for the hard work.
And great staff. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
thank you.
Discussion and communication, personnel, new staff hire recommendations. Mr. Drill?
Yep, so you heard, normally Mrs. Moorfield would do that, but as Mr. Rasmussen talked about, she is already up, preparing so she can be up at 7 o'clock in the morning and be at the convention center to do the recruitment. And some of our administrators will join. She went up early so we could get our space and everything else. She's up there tonight, so I get to pinch hit for her. You have certified staff in front of you. You notice that temporary position there for the spring. We still needed a temporary science teacher. And the person that we hired to be our football coach said, well, I pretty much teach health and PE, but you need science, I'll do science. So he just jumped right in. You know, we 7 or 8 years ago, you know, we hired a temporary football coach for a few years, and some staff were not as excited about that because it felt like it was taking some time. This person jumped right in and said, sure, I'll do it. I asked Mr. Woodrow the other day, how's that going? And he said, the guy's amazing. The guy's really connected to kids. I'm just telling you it's the right way to go. Typically the way Mr. Woodrow would have responded. And, you know, the guy's connected to every kind of kid. Everybody likes it. Everything's good. Would you agree that's kind of like one of those?
We are tremendously fortunate to find a non-science person who's good as he is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Great.
So we will continue on looking for another job. Obviously, we'll have some other openings. So that's a temporary fill for us. And then certified staff already for 23-24. You notice down there that Kathleen talked earlier about hiring one of her autism specialists. And the 3 we've had this year, but we decided to hire them back because so that's what we're following. Questions about that?
Alright,
Cool.
is it already?
I would like to say congratulations to
Yes.
Mr. Guy.
Yeah,
Congratulations,
Yeah,
Mr. Dyer.
so,
We appreciate it.
We're really running ragged. Today and Mr. Rasmussen, they both, I'm sure, have ideas about how to make this job interesting. Mrs. Moorfield and Mrs. Johnson have already come up with ways to make sure that he's on tap. So I'm going to pretty much just leave you alone and let you try to get your job.
Yeah,
done.
right.
So-
Wow.
Yeah, they did. They stepped him in the back office. There's just some rearranging, so I'm staying out of that as well.
How many days a week are you gonna be here? Like 12?
7 days a week. He's a great guy. It's going to be really exciting. You guys know that Brian started teaching here a number of years ago, went through his admin program. He was the activities director at the junior high, went from there to Almsville as a VP, took over Cloverdale 6 years ago, ran right into the fire the first 4 or 5 months, managed all that, and is here ready to take on the new set of tasks. And if you heard tonight, right, he's bringing some of the tasks with him.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And
that's
so
good.
it's gonna be a big job. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Feel free to check in with him.
Good
through the
move.
course of
Thank you very much for doing
Super excited.
Thank you for the
opportunity.
it. Great. Okay, staff retirement from PERS, Mr. Drill.
the year. Yep, so you have a PERS only retirement. Mr. Potajic will be back next year through Measure 98 to help us with our students through Measure 98 and CTE. Is there anything you want to add to that?
He's going to continue the same job, college and career counselor, college and career coach.
Okay.
60, yeah, go ahead. Okay. On 60, you heard earlier that Mrs. Overly is going to leave. What I thought was interesting, I don't know if you read the letter, but the letter goes back a number of generations, and there are people in our community that have been around for a while. And there are people in the community who have had generations be around for a while. And I didn't realize this, but you know, it is hard to leave. She mentions that her grandparents helped vote and then pay for the original building with their taxes. That her parents were in the freshman class, the very first year Cascade School District's existence. That she graduated from Cascade, her kids graduated from Cascade, aunts, uncles, cousins. So to not have a Coberly around is a little bit unusual.
Weird.
Yeah, so if you see her, tell her thank you so much. The first year I taught here, she was my mentor teacher. And if you think I'm a little bit sarcastic, it's all her fault. That's what I'm gonna say. She was fantastic. Just as a great teacher to be able to remind you of the important stuff and tell you to let loose of the stuff that's not as important. So great situation. And then 60 staff resignation. It's with a heavy heart that we are seeing that Jason Lovell is going to move on. He's headed to Crook County. His family really wanted to move to Central Oregon, and he's ready to do that. I'm not excited about seeing him wrestle against us for Crook County as an assistant coach at the moment, but I'm sure at some point they will make him a head coach. So we are out looking for a head coach for wrestling as we speak. And our athletic director is already on it. So we're working on that. Perfect. Questions about those things?
Nope, that's just sad.
And then the last thing is that we've got just an update for you about Drama Club. They're going to be at the State Thespian Conference, which is here in town. Technically, they're not going out of state. They did want you to let you know what's going on. So they can do an overnight trip without your guys' need to vote on that, as long as they stay in state, that's okay. But they also were talking about the idea of heading to Ashland as well. So we've got the National Honor Society heading to Ashland, and we've got these guys heading. Are you doing both trips, Mr. Raffleson?
I'm not sure about the drama.
Okay, got it. So they're gonna head down there. Just wanted to let you guys know. And I think in the future, she's talking about a trip to New York City another year or so from now.
Okay,
So we've got a very, very exciting and interested new drama teacher ready to help our kids see really cool stuff. Questions about that?
Krista Duffy, is that her name? Okay. Nope, sounds exciting.
Okay.
Okay. So all that's left is 6F, and I believe we're all done with that, correct?
I think they are, right? Everybody done with their statement of economic interest?
Yes.
Thank you guys very much for doing that.
Thank you.
A lot of consternation. There is a bill at the state legislature. I don't know what the number is going to end up being about allowing smaller school districts to let board members off of this. I don't know if we're too big now, but we'll wait and see. The number has fluctuated up and down. For a while, it was 1,000 school districts at 1,000 and fewer won't need to do it. And then suddenly it was 3,000, then it went back to 2,000. So I'm not quite sure where they're going to land. But I appreciate you guys all doing it because there was a fine or something.
Yeah.
Like 5,000.
Thanks for taking care of it. Appreciate it.
Okay, 7, public comment. No one has submitted anything for public comments. We will move straight to number 8, which is resolutions. And I have those. Thank you very much. 8A, resolution regarding new hire recommendations.
Be resolved, the Cascade Board of Education moves to approve the new hire recommendations of Shane Hedrick, temporary high school science teacher, Summer Haskett, autism specialist, Bruce Kinsey, high school construction wood teacher, Martin Salinas, high school social studies teacher, and Justin Toe, high school math teacher, as recommended by the administration.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to hire the recommendations to hire the new teachers as recommended. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Resolution regarding elementary English language arts curriculum adoption.
Be it resolved, the Cascade Board of Education approve the adoption of benchmark education for the elementary English language arts curriculum.
Second.
So moved and seconded to approve the adoption of benchmark education for the elementary English language arts curriculum. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Any future agenda items that we have to discuss? This time, all that we have is the budget.
We have the budget for next month, the budget, full budget committee, along with the other 5 board members. We've got one in the background.
Yep.
Who will be here. Appreciate that he comes to the meetings, and we will meet in here for the budget meeting, which will happen probably at 5 o'clock. We have run into timeline issues in the past, just to make sure we're covering everything. And then at 7 o'clock, we'll have the regular board meeting. Am I saying that right, Mr.?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Plan.
That's the plan.
And you'll have the budget to us by May 1st? Okay.
Is there dinner that night?
There will be dinner that night.
Important stuff.
Hey, man.
Okay.
Good question.
You don't want me hanging.
That's the best comment I've heard. I agree. No, we're gonna figure out something and we'll make sure we have it and maybe we can get actually do some of it.
Okay, being nothing else, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all very much for coming. We appreciate it.